Cheers.
Hi. Okay. First of all, when putting this together, I contacted a couple of people in the Irish game dev scene and the Netherlands game scene, simply because I live and work there. So I got a lot of help from couchfriends.com and psychicsoftware.com, so you might want to check them out as well too. And I've kind of put their logos at the bottom of different slides. I've tried to show opposing views where possible. So if it's my view, I'll be able to state it quite easily, and if it's Psychic Software's view, which tends to be different than mine, you'll know from the logos. So to start off, I'm imagining there's one of three reasons that somebody might be interested in game development. So the first one is work, which is obviously you might want to become a game developer. Second one is for hobby, which is kind of obvious. And the third one is work again, but how working in game development might affect how you look at your JavaScript coding. In particular, so going backwards, and in particular from there, there's all of these links. All of this stuff will be available. There'll be a link on Meetup, and you can go through it. I made loads and loads and loads of slides, and I didn't want to cull them, so I thought I'll just skip through loads and I'll ignore others. Some I'll go through in detail, and at the end of it, you can just go back and go through the links yourself. So this one in particular is really good. What JavaScript programmers can learn from game devs, and he talks about pure functions and all that kind of stuff. Go check that link yourself. I'm not going to try and explain it to you. Another one is from my partner. She wrote one on how she became a better developer through looking at games. In particular, something like this: gaming is UX distilled. So if you think about it, when you're dealing with a web app or anything like that, the ultimate goal is to sell a product or to get a piece of information across. And UX is generally there to facilitate that. Whereas in gaming, UX is the end goal. There's no product to be sold and there's no information to get across unless it's about the gaming or the UX itself. And when you spend some time working only on UX, then when you're making a web app later on, there's no doubt that you're going to bring certain design tropes and such like across with it. So again, there's a link there. You can check it and go through the intricacies. So yes. The second one is being a hobbyist. Now, I reckon this one is pretty much a non-runner from the start. And if you go on to, this is really interesting, if you go on to GitHub and do a search for PHP RPG, I would imagine that's the most cliched thing a PHP developer is going to do. I've done it myself. And the sheer number of PHP RPG scripts out there. But then go and actually look at all of the repos, and 99% of them are empty. One or two might be half developed, and none of them are completely developed. Simply because building an RPG game or any type of game like that is quite involved. And you're not going to come home from work 5 days a week and get straight into developing a game. So for me, the idea of hobby game developers doesn't really work. Whereas if you tie it in with your work, and you know that every time you're building a game, working on a game, it's also improving your professional skills. You're more likely to put that time in. And maybe, if you're really lucky, you might be working in a company that's willing to facilitate that. There was one company I was working on, and as far as I could see, I was the development manager, and there was a kind of a disconnect between the graphic designers and the PHP and JavaScript coders. So during the lunchtime and sometimes after work, we get everybody and make games. And some of the obstacles that were there, the bad communication between the graphic designers and the coders, would be broken down because they were more into just getting in and swapping ideas and arguing with each other. And again, that would then benefit the workflow in normal day-to-day. Including the introduction of Trello. It was one person wanted, improving their game, communicating with the graphic designers. They got in, they started implementing Trello, and then we saw how well that worked. We introduced Trello to the company at large. So either way, whether you're going for hobbyist or work-related, the best thing to do is to get involved with the social scene. So we have one game a month, which is pretty much an international thing. Every month, a theme is given out, and people try and make really small, simple games just to ship it, to get it in and out within the space of a month, which means the graphics don't have to be perfect. Every wannabe JavaScript game developer's first obstacle, or first assumed obstacle, is going to be that they don't do graphics. They're going to assume the graphics is important. Simply not the case. And when you're meeting up with these things, and each month they've all got these mad little games with weird mechanics, you'll see that the graphics is the least important at that particular point. So one game a month is very casual, very easygoing, kind of support group type of thing. Whereas Dubludo is the more national front of things. So here we have Brenda Romero and John Romero. So John Romero is the creator of Doom. Brenda Romero is the creator of the first 6 Wizardry games. I assume you at least know Doom. So they come over to Ireland a lot, and they're kind of the Irish, they're the patrons of the Irish scene. They've taken it on board, particularly Brenda Romero, taken it on board to help the Irish scene with some kind of international discoverability and recognition. So yeah, that's Dubludo. They're the Irish Game Dev Facebook page. So afterwards, if you want, just send me your email and I'll add you to that list. Okay. Also, because at the same time that Brenda's over, they've now formed an association. I don't think it has a name yet, but it's an association for game developers as opposed to the association that's in existence at the moment, which is for game businesses. So Sega and Havoc and all of them are already industry is represented, but up until now, the developers haven't been. So again, if you go onto the Facebook page and One Game a Month, you'll get all this information and you'll get to know about these goings-ons. So if JavaScript Weekly is the highlight of your week, there's also Game Dev JS Weekly. So needless to say, 2 magazines on a Friday. Getting something that's so niche, it's really difficult. Like on the JavaScript Weekly, you will get maybe 1 article per week that's about games or JavaScript art or such like. Whereas this one, obviously, you can't get any more specific, and it's brilliant. It's got so many tutorials, stuff on the industry, example games, example game loops. So I would highly recommend that and that. Okay, so that's the intro, the resources, all that stuff. Said the links are on Meetup. This part, the next part I want to talk about is the goal, the journey, the challenge that we might face here tonight or look at tonight. So on a tangent, if you're looking for books, this is my favorite. It's the most high level. It's the least technical. It's simply about the idea of games, and more so, it's about brainstorming. So it's about getting 2 or 3 people together with a pen and paper and just scribbling down ideas. And I have it as a PDF, so I get all of the lists, and then I copy and paste them into my SQL, and then I make all of these mad connections between all of the different lists in it. If you get the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's really good. Otherwise, any book that mentions a hero's journey, it'll probably be a bit pretentious, but The Hero with 1,000 Faces is all about the hero's arc in movies and mythology and books, and it's just as obviously as relevant in games. Creating that arc and creating that tension and that challenge for the players. So there, as I said, mention books, that one and any book that mentions Joseph Campbell. Is that true? Can people hear me? I tend to talk. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. All right. So the challenge that I would present is that I went to the indie game development group and went, hey, I'm into JavaScript. What do you think of JavaScript in the game industry? What has it got to offer? What kind of form does JavaScript have to offer that, say, C or something else doesn't have? And I got a big bad none. Quote, JavaScript doesn't really offer anything new, though, in terms of capabilities. It does suit web-based stuff, though, better, and people are hailing it as a Swiss Army knife in that regard. There'd be no game unique to any language. So that was the end of that conversation. And he has a point. The thing about JavaScript games to date is if they're not part of the JavaScript scene, which is making a game in under 13K, I'm sure you're all familiar with that kind of stuff, or the really, really clever graphic manipulation type of stuff. So if it's not, it's casual games, and you can imagine there's a certain, this is probably where the worlds collide, there's a certain, a difference between the attitudes of casual game creators and indie developers. So to date, the indie developers have been using Unity and Unreal. So these are large IDEs that are also frameworks, I guess. They've got all of the code inside, and then graphical user interface. As of this month, both Unreal and Unity export using Webgl plugins. So this is only happening now, and this is kind of something I've been waiting around for a while, and I post every now and again on Facebook and go, it's on its way very soon. When you create your Unity game, it's not going to be forced to be in the little Unity web player anymore. Nobody was interested. No reason why they should be interested. Unity web player worked just fine, except that it leaves that visualization that JavaScript is only good for small casual games. What I'm hoping to see is something akin to the difference between a native Android web app and its web browser counterpart. Web apps, they're enclosed. Whether it's Unity web player or Flash or an Android or iPhone, they're enclosed within their own structure, whereas browser, by its nature, it's open. It doesn't have that kind of boundary. So the potential to jump from one server, from one game, to be in a game, knock on a door, or open a door and come out on a completely different server, somebody completely different game, or something like Wikipedia, where you have a 3D world and everybody can add their own bits to the world. They can populate it so that you can move around in different servers and you get different rules or shared rules, whatever. Point about it is, I'm convinced that JavaScript, more than any other language, does actually have a form that no other language has, a unique form in that it's part of the web. Is it a chance to get a glass of water? Okay, and this was another thing. When I went to the Couch Friends and Psychic Software, saying, well, what does JavaScript have unique to offer? This was what they both came up with. Using a mobile phone as a controller. So using WebSockets or WebRTC, you would have your mobile phone, so main game, a football game, and then have 8 people playing, controlling the characters. I'd originally intended to do a demo, and then once I realized I'd only got 25 minutes, I kind of let that go. Another great idea is this one here from Psychic Software. where when you're racing the cars, you can be racing against somebody who was racing the previous day. So it saves the kind of the polygon or the route that you've taken and the vectors and the speeds, and it saves all them. So the next time somebody's playing, you can actually be playing games from previous days and such like. Something that's made really easy if you have access to a LAMP stack and a bit of front end, whereas if you're dealing with C# or Unity and all that, it would be quite a complicated process. Really easy with JavaScript. So again, these are just some of the points that were given. Once I was told, or once I'd put this out, what does JavaScript have unique to offer? And I got this back, well, nothing. Psychic Software, the guy Sam Redford, gave me a couple of points to counteract that. In that, what I was giving was opinion, and I was hesitant about that. Where what he's giving is based on experience, and his main thing is. Zed's game is pretty complex, involves high-performance UDP, client-server networking, a lot of moving sprites, reasonably advanced collision detection, and isometric layering. So that sounds complicated to me, and that sounds like, if you can do all that kind of stuff, then we're not limited to Flappy Bird or whatever is expected from JavaScript. Okay, so what happened is Unity and Unreal bring out these WebGL plugin exporters, and I'm thinking, that's it sorted. My job is done. The two worlds are going to collide and everything's going to be groovy. Except that, first of all, the file differences were humongous. One anecdote I got was 175K for a simple game inside the Web Unity player went to 13 meg and plus once it was exported to WebGL. Only. But that's to be expected. The plugins only came out last month, and the focus from Mozilla and ECMAScript and ASM.js and all that up until now was to prove that it could be done. And now that we know that it can be done, we can start optimizing it and finding out what ways it should be done. But I mean, I'm sure you're all aware, Sarah Broughton, the Doom clone that can be played inside the browser. There's quite a few of them now. So at the same time that Unity and Unreal were bringing out these plugins under the direction of Mozilla, Chrome removed the MP API. He's so freaky. Removed the MP API plugin architecture. So literally 2 weeks ago, all of the indie devs woke up and all of their games that used to work on Chrome stopped working. And they're pissed off. You can imagine they're pissed off. So that wasn't me going to step in and go, hey, it's time to move over to WebGL and get my head chopped off. So I've kind of kept it quiet. And so it's but some of them are talking about hacking Chrome, others are talking about dropping Chrome. A few of them are talking about going back to their game and re-exporting it into WebGL, as can be understood, since we're going from 174K up to 13K and plus. But the fact is, eventually, I'm assuming the Unity and Unreal and all them, they're big behemoths anyway. They're the type of thing like Dreamweaver in the old days, just creating this massive unnecessary code. So I'm sure they'll kind of get all those things sorted. And I'd also hope that maybe they'll be able to separate it so that the code, that's the Unity code, will be separate from the game loop code made by the developer, and then maybe one of them can be centralized and shared, whereas the other one is reduced in size and easier to download. So yeah, these again, I've just written down all of the points. I mean, what does that mean? It means that in 2 years or 3 years, whereas now every studio probably has one or more C or C# programmers, the potential in 2 or 3 years for every studio to have a JavaScript coder, it's almost inevitable. I can't see, as I go through it, we all know through Moore's law that technology gets faster and the memory gets cheaper and all that kind of stuff, which kind of implies that it's going to make sense that in a few years, all of the consoles, the Xboxes and all that kind of stuff, they will simply have a browser inside them. Because if the browser is now running at near native speeds, it's going to be in their interest to be able to produce to the console just as easy as to the mobile and just as they would to PC or wherever else. So what I imagine is that there is a huge gap at the moment where the developers don't really look at JavaScript, and the JavaScript people aren't really thinking about games as a career, because that was the domain of the C programmers. So my prediction is that over the next year or two there will be a new career path, a career opportunity that wasn't as realistic as before. And that's all there. So the technical bit. Kind of hesitant with this bit. This is why I went to Sam and asked for help, because I really didn't like the idea of talking to a load of JavaScript coders about code. It seemed a bit presumptuous on my part. However, Sam and me are in total disagreement. So Sam is a professor in NUIG Galway, and he's probably the most prolific game developer in Ireland that I know. So he uses games as a way of teaching code and code architecture. So his buzz is roll your own engine. Don't use any of the engines or frameworks that are out there. And the main thing is your 60 frames a second. This is one of the things I reckon anybody who was surprised by Flipboard moving over to Canvas if you're into games, it wouldn't be as much of a surprise. And this is what I'm saying about using game development to inform and educate your web app or your day job. Yeah, it's like I still kind of cringe when I think of data being displayed in the Canvas by Flipboard in that way. But nonetheless, I can absolutely see where they're coming from. So yeah. So anyway, the most important thing within a game loop is to keep it at 60 frames a second, and therefore. Sam's methodology, I think he gives a bit of code next. Yes, is to keep the game loop up near the top. Request animation frame is the main call. And then the most important thing somewhere is to watch out for garbage collection. It's probably the next frame. No. What Sam recommends if you're rolling your own game engine is to use Pixie as a renderer, which makes sense to me because I tend to use, I'm of the opposing view, I use a library, and it uses Pixie.js as the renderer too. So I like the idea of being able to take things at stages. If you want to get straight in and write your own code, you can, whereas if you want a lot of help, you use Phaser, whereas you only want medium help, you use Pixie. What I want to say about Phaser is the one thing I can guarantee with Phaser is if you use it for your first game, you'll get your first game finished. If you use Crafty.js, which is what I used, I got 90% finished and moved on to another game, and I didn't get it quite finished, and then I tried another library, and masses and masses of libraries. And I've got loads and loads of half-finished games to show for it, but when you come to Phaser, the greatest thing about Phaser is the amount of code examples. It's like there's one of his packages, it's a commercial package, you have to pay about 45 quid for it, and it's got 90 examples. That's 90 game loops. That's 90 games just waiting to be skinned in a different way or to be hacked in a different way to make your unique game. So whereas I had real trouble with Crafty trying to source examples or source a piece of code that I then wanted to adapt to my own. When it came to Phaser, there was just it was extraordinary how much was there. I won't bother going through the Pixie code, but it's there for you to check. It's really, really simple. So yes, as I said, examples. I wonder, I won't take a chance of trying to open up a link, but Phaser, they've got, I don't know, maybe 200 or 300 examples for the standard package. And the thing about Phaser is you can choose your physics engine. So there's a Ninja engine, an arcade engine, and then you can use the Box 2D engine. But you have to pay for it. It's about 40 quid or something. But then it goes from having maybe 200 examples to you get 90 examples with the Box 2D. So you end up with 290 different games. And they're all similar. There's enough to go as you go through each game loop. You can see there's things that are consistent. For example, every game will have a create function. It gets called for you. You don't worry about it. And every every game has the update function, and that's the request anim frame function. That's the thing that gets called 60 times a second. So when you see all of these games, you go, all right, so the preload, that's where you put in, you load up your sprites. Create, you place your sprites, and then update, you do all of your fancy thing. And when you see that in every single game, it's very easy then to extrapolate and work on your own piece by recognizing the similarities and such. So this guy, I'd love to be able to click on the links, but again, I'm afraid to because I won't be able to get back. But his name is Emmanuel. Okay, the second one, yeah. Yeah, cool. So his website is it's very commercial, but very first thing is there's a game in the header. Like, and how cool is that? So when you're dealing with Web Unity, you're talking about something boxed. When you're dealing with having to download an executable or various methods of distribution, as opposed to it actually being in your header. Like, it's so accessible. So anyway, this guy is called Emmanuel, and for years he was using Box 2D and maybe Flash and ActionScript, but recently he moved over to Phaser. So the code is there. You can see, well, obviously you can't see from out there, but we have the onload function, and then down here we have the update function, and it ends up mirroring all the other Phaser games. So I'll just see if I can. So each of these steps in the code, starting off with, it's just tiled. Yeah, so what we're looking here is the basics of a survival game. You can see that the arc is meant to be a torch. And then if we just go down a bit further, there we go, you can see the game. I can't seem to move around, but I think you get the basics there. It's a map type of game. I can't get them to move if I move the screen scrolls for some reason. Okay, so this guy makes tutorials usually once every 2 or 3 weeks, and when he does, they immediately appear in the Game Dev JS weekly newsletter that I pointed out earlier on. So, and like this one, as I said, you move that box around, and the torch will ray trace and show you the bit you're meant to see. Meanwhile, there's another link, if I can get that now. Okay. So here you get to see how, like, dealing with hexagons is quite messy, or can be. But again, all the code is there, and again, broken down into the same functions on create, and update. So again, you're always being able to recognize the code and compare it. So between this guy and the original Phaser tutorials, you've practically got an example of every single type of game or game mechanic out there to build on. So, as I said, you can either, if you know your stuff, then as you take Sam Redford's route and you roll your own engine. But if it's your first game and you want to get a game finished, I can't recommend Phaser enough. Once you've built your first game, you can then obviously decide that you want to optimize it, remove the engine stuff, and just roll your own render and such like. Okay. Finally, on this section, we have WebSockets and WebRTC. WebRTC is relatively new, but again, I assume most of you, being JavaScript developers, will be already pretty familiar with it. The main difference between WebSockets and WebRTC is you don't need a server in between your communications with WebRTC other than the initial handshake. And I think there are ways of not needing a server for that too. So like when WebRTC came out first, I really didn't think much of it. It's a way for peer-to-peer conferencing or communications. Thought nothing of it until the guys started bringing out these using the mobile phone as controllers, and then you start thinking of localized. WebRTC maybe between two different places might not have as much to offer, but if you're talking about in a room, with a server and the ability, it's for the first time I imagine a soccer game. It's at 11 aside, 11, yeah. So 22 people all playing on one screen, simply because it's so easy to get 22 mobile phones in the one room, compared to trying to get 22 PS4 controllers connected to a PS4. It's not going to happen. It's actually potential now to have that kind of people playing the one game. I'd love to see that in action. All the normal stuff you have to deal with when you're dealing with anything like real-time communications. So won't bother going too much into that. All the links are there to follow, find yourself. And then lastly is my own bit. I've been, as I said, I've been trying to look for what unique form JavaScript might have to offer a game developer. And for me, it's a game that doesn't forget that it's also a website. That was just the thing that I was playing with. So also the idea of this out of frame. Now, out of frame, it's the phrase I came up with. There's probably already a known phrase for it. It's probably something that's a concept that's already familiar. I just never come across it before, so I end up being limited to my own stuff. And the out of frame, as I said, it's the idea of no boundaries, of not being left with an executable and it goes no further. If you want the next version of the game, you have to download a new executable. And part of that was thinking about things like open data, having plugins that would take the data in, we say weather forecasts into the server, and then change the game so that the weather in the game reflected the weather outside, or crime statistics. Maybe if if it was a geographically based game, that the rent of the apartments maybe would go up and down depending on crime rates, or things completely different insofar as you could have the crime rates within the game being directly proportional to bee populations, if that's the only statistic you can get from the outside and feed it in. It doesn't have to be direct correlation, but the idea nonetheless of getting data from the outside world into the game, and then getting stuff that's happening inside the game back out into the outside world. And I'm still convinced that this is unique to a unique proposition that JavaScript can offer. So my first example of this kind of thing is a bit of a tangent, but I think you guys might appreciate it because way more than the indie game developers would appreciate it. But basically, I found a cube. I found a JavaScript piece of software that will turn 6 divs into a 6-facing cube. And then I got 6 different JavaScript jQuery libraries that would somehow manipulate an image and make a puzzle out of it, and then assigned one of those libraries to each of the faces. So you end up, if I can, I'll actually, Control T, is it? For new tab. Command T. So there it is there, and then each of the faces. So we say if I click this one, this, the whole thing kind of opens up, and then there's the next layer of puzzle behind it. And I've done that in various places. So what I like about it is it's kind of a game being made out of jQuery libraries. It's not AAA, it's not Unity, it's not anything that's already expected. It goes back to me to the hacking that would have taken place in the 80s. Like, and when the first games were being made, the first digital games, they were geniuses that were getting a cathode ray tube and magnets and making Pong out of it. They weren't being given a games library. And this kind of harkens back to that era where I grabbed some JavaScript libraries, some jQuery libraries that were purely to do with presentation and carousels or whatever. Now, there's two ways of utilizing it in a game. The first could be that it's puzzle-based and that you have to actually figure out some logic. But the thing that I'm going to use it for is that it's a way of dialing in things. So instead of dialing in a 10-digit number by clicking 10 numbers, you'll click on 10 different, a sequence, we say. So if I click that one, if it'll work. By clicking them in a different order, all of those numbers are being saved and sent to the server. So if you click them in one order, you'll get a certain result, and if you click them in another. And the idea is that it's going to be a control system for portals. So when you go through a portal, depending what you've dialed, where you come out, will change. So if I can just show you. So this is the game itself, and it's built around Joomla. Back when I started it 3 or 4 years ago, Joomla was a good choice. Last version of Joomla 3.42 is the first one that Joomla is now using Composer for dependencies. Drupal is using Composer for dependencies. So what I want to do is break it down so that's using Composer itself, and then that you can take away the PHP bit and put in Node instead, or take it out and put in Python. The idea is that as well as it being a front end and a back end, it also might be just a set of standards, so it becomes almost language agnostic. So the idea behind the game was that, as I said, it never forgets that it's a website. So, as you'd expect, in a Joomla website or anything like it, you've got like your menus and such, like in little widgets and modules. In the center is a forum where as normal you'd go in and you'd post stuff, and you upload your avatar as per normal, a little very square pictured style avatar, which then added, so an X and Y coordinate, so that you can now move around. This is kind of a phaser. So as a view, you imagine you've got your X, Y coordinates, and then you've got all of your normal stuff, your email and your login. And so it's like every time I move, it sends the coordinates back using Ajax. And with Phaser, I was able to implement this particular view in a day. Once I click on that, it goes off and it comes up in a different tile. So we can go back. So the top part here is canvas, and then this part here is the DOM divs over the canvas. So you can still have the canvas in the background, but there's DOM stuff going on above it. If I go back to my slides, I practically have a view for every JavaScript library I want to experiment with. So all of these different views, like the game uses Bootstrap. And then in other areas up here, I'll have graphs and pie charts from Raphael.js. And I have another view at the moment where we're introducing React.js. And literally a view per library as I'm experimenting with different interfaces and different ways of displaying the data from the source. So one of the things is, like where normally you would, you've got, fail fast. The way I do things is I bring in a library, like we see we've got Ember there. We've got Phaser over here. I can just turn a view off if it's not working and leave it there. Either the technology will catch up or I'll come up with a new idea or whatever. But for a JavaScript developer who doesn't want to choose libraries and always feels you're missing out, I think this is just, the game engine itself is just a great playing field. So as a new library comes along, I make a folder, stick it in, I hook it back to the original MySQL, and then move on to the next library. So again, an engine and a game system that's very much involved in affecting how I do my day job. If my day job, my boss says, we're going to be using something like Ember, I immediately go off and I implement it in my game. And it means I have this kind of emotional thing. I have immediate, even intuitive comparison. So if I'm messing with something in Angular and then I'm messing with something in Ember and it just doesn't feel quick, I can just move on to the next library with that kind of emotional attachment, but without an end result that's going into production. So it's like, the engine is meant to be configurable. It's a game that's meant to be played by a games master and 100 people rather than MMO millions of people. So the idea is that each instance will be unique and people will pick and choose what libraries they want to use or what interfaces, but the whole thing is highly configurable. So that's kind of it. As I stated, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, there's a disconnect between the indie game developers and the potential for the JavaScript game developers. So what I'm imagining might be cool is either we say like every 3 months we have a meetup specific to game development that gives people a chance to show their ideas. So it's like, or organize a monthly or bi-monthly, 2-monthly, whatever, JavaScript game development meetup that's separate and unique just to game development. But that's up to you. If anybody's interested, I'd certainly do my bit to help it. And that's it.
So are there any big game studios like using JavaScript, or is it really just indie devs and kind of people playing around?
Okay, let me see. Yeah, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Humble Bundle and that kind of thing, Steam bundles.
Yeah.
Yes, here we go. About 2 months ago, Humble Bundle came out, the Humble ASM.js bundle. So they're all 50 meg size games, commercial games, and that would have been the first debut, the presentation to the gaming world. Faster Than Light is absolutely brilliant. So it's available from Steam as a normal executable or whatever way that Steam do it. In fact, all of those games were originally available in your legacy C formats. And then so so that's about a month or two ago. As Sam points out, Game Dev Tycoon, another game. But to date, it's mainly been casual games. So Booster Media, Spill Games, all of those Bejeweled type match 3 games. It's a multi-million-dollar business. In fact, one of the things I'd forgotten about it was in order to mitigate the notion of the broke game developer who's trying to make... See, one of the things that's been recognized within the indie game community is if you build a game that's fair enough, you might build a second one that's fair enough. By the time you've built your third or fourth, you're going to have a failure, and as soon as you have a failure, you're out of the game, because very few indie developers, even if they've had 3 successes, are going to be able to afford the fourth, if you're even lucky to have 3 successes. What I was going to suggest was that maybe teams should get together temporarily to make a few casual games. Like within the casual game community, you're expected to release a game every 2 months, so 6 games a year. So it's all about continuous development, getting it out there, and highly efficient and highly optimized audio sprite sheets, all that kind of stuff. So I would imagine it would probably behoove the indie developer, as well as he's making his own classic games that he's going to be proud of, to maybe be part of a team so that they can actually try and churn out. Because if you can't churn out a game every 2 or 3 months, even if they're crap games, if you can't do that, then you're probably in the wrong business. Like if you're too emotionally attached to your art. Not to say that you can't be an artist as well, but I'm saying you should be able to produce these match 3 games too. So no, there isn't any big companies, but it's tending towards that. Because literally 99% of the indie developers use Unity. So they would have been blinkered to using Unity up until now. So now that Unity is offering WebGL, then maybe we'll start seeing JavaScript. I'm reckoning it's inevitable that we'll start seeing JavaScript being taken on by the big houses. But at the moment, I don't think it's happening. But the tests are there to prove that the speeds are there. Like it's possible. We are getting near native speeds within the browser, so it is inevitable.
Okay. Else?
So Unity itself supports JavaScript as the language the coders can use. Do you not feel that's worthwhile, or? Unity
doesn't. Yeah, there's a form. It's a PR thing. The JavaScript that Unity uses is a subset of C in the first place. And I sat down. I'm not great at JavaScript, but I have a medium understanding of it. And I sat down to use the Unity JavaScript, and it meant nothing to me. So as far as that part of it, I would see that as little more than a PR gimmick. Anybody who takes Unity seriously will use C as their scripting language. When it exports to WebGL, I'm not sure what happens then. I find that if it exports something, it's like exporting minified CSS. We end up with something that's not really editable anymore. So I'm wondering, when they export something from Unity, will the JavaScript developer be able to get in there and add their own functionality, take away bits of functionality and such like, after it's been created by Unity? Or is it a case, which is the current thing, of having to make plugins in C that will then export in the particular way you want? Yeah, at the moment, I don't think the Unity JavaScript, I don't think I don't think game developers use it. I think the idea is it's meant to be. It's meant to have 2 or 3 languages, TypeScript as well, but I don't think anybody uses it, takes it seriously. Especially when you're talking about game size, file size, and optimization afterwards.
All right.
Hiya. Thanks for your talk. On your bio, it says that you're a Coder Dojo mentor as well. Was. In your previous experience as one, did you teach the kids how to create games in JavaScript using these libraries?
No. I would keep it simple. So the main thing was we started off with how to make a game in 5 lines of code. So that was your HTML page with you are standing outside a castle that's surrounded by shark-filled moat. You can A, enter the castle, or B, jump into the moat, and there were 2 hyperlinks. So you click on either the hyperlinks, and and that was a game. And, and that immediately got them into creating these mega 40, 50 page bifurcation games that we then try to go, right, we've built that now, can we get all of that? Instead of having 50 HTML pages, can we get the content of each of those pages and make an array and have it being read by the JavaScript? And then finally, we had a basic text box where you can input something and it'll attempt to split it into 2 words, a command and a description. And we made simple text adventure games that way, where sometimes the code, the text itself would be in JavaScript and available so they can cheat by looking at the view source. And other times we'd have it as JSON on the server where you make your move, it goes to the server, and then sends you back your text. So yeah, very, very simple, but no, we didn't use libraries. No, that's not, actually we used processing a little bit at one point. Processing JS for some graphics and sound, but that was kind of separate from the games.
Okay, cool, thanks.
All right, thanks, Rob. Great talk.